Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov, the central character of Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, stands as one of the most psychologically intricate figures in literary history. A former law student living in poverty in St. Petersburg, Raskolnikov becomes the architect of a crime that catalyzes the entire novel's philosophical exploration. His murder of Alyona Ivanovna, a pawnbroker, and later her innocent sister Lizaveta, launches a spiraling descent into guilt, madness, and, eventually, spiritual rebirth. Raskolnikov's role in the narrative is multifaceted. He is both protagonist and antihero, a criminal and a seeker of truth, embodying the ideological struggles of 19th century Russia. Narrative role. Raskolnikov is the central figure through whom Dostoevsky explores the psychological and moral consequences of crime. The narrative revolves around his actions, internal deliberations, and eventual transformation. Unlike traditional crime novels that emphasize the mystery of who did it, Crime and Punishment reveals the murderer at the outset. The true tension lies in Raskolnikov's psychological unraveling. Raskolnikov's decision to kill the pawnbroker is not motivated purely by financial desperation. Instead, he seeks to test a philosophical theory he has formulated, that extraordinary individuals, like Napoleon, have the moral right to commit crimes if their actions serve a higher purpose. By murdering Alyona, he attempts to prove he is such a person, someone capable of transcending conventional morality for the sake of a greater good. Yet, his theory crumbles under the weight of human conscience. Following the murder, Raskolnikov becomes tormented by guilt and paranoia. He isolates himself, falls ill, and exhibits erratic behavior. His relationships, particularly with his mother, sister Dunya, and the virtuous Sonya Marmeladov, begin to reflect his inner turmoil. The narrative, driven by his psychological state, becomes a penetrating study of conscience and moral reckoning. Symbolic significance. Raskolnikov's very name suggests division and conflict. Raskol, in Russian, means schism or split, which mirrors his internal fragmentation. He is torn between opposing forces, reason and emotion, pride and humility, atheism and faith, nihilism and compassion. This duality permeates every aspect of his character and drives the philosophical inquiries of the novel. He embodies the ideological tensions of 19th century Russia, where utilitarianism, rationalism, and the rise of nihilistic thought clashed with deep-rooted religious and moral traditions. His actions are not merely personal, but symbolic of a societal crisis, a loss of spiritual grounding, and a dangerous flirtation with radical individualism. Moreover, Raskolnikov represents the archetype of the superfluous man in Russian literature, a character often marked by intellectual brilliance, social alienation, and moral paralysis. However, Dostoevsky evolves this archetype by granting Raskolnikov the potential for redemption. This transformation elevates him from a symbol of failure to a symbol of hope. Psychological and moral complexity. Raskolnikov is a profoundly introspective character. He is not a cold-blooded killer, but a young man trapped in a philosophical experiment gone awry. Before the murder, he vacillates between justification and doubt, and afterward, he is haunted by intense guilt that he cannot intellectualize away. His mental anguish is the true punishment for his crime, long before the judicial system intervenes. His interactions with Sonya Marmeladov are central to understanding his psychological evolution. Sonya, a prostitute who maintains her Christian faith and moral dignity, becomes a mirror and moral counterweight to Raskolnikov. Her unwavering compassion, forgiveness, and spiritual strength gradually dismantle his ideological defenses. She urges him to confess not just for legal absolution, but for spiritual renewal. Through Sonya, Dostoevsky introduces the idea that redemption is only possible through suffering, humility, and the acceptance of divine grace. This journey from intellectual arrogance to spiritual rebirth culminates in Raskolnikov's confession and eventual exile to Siberia. Even then, he remains emotionally distant until, in the epilogue, a moment of sincere, emotional, and spiritual awakening begins to bloom. This subtle, hopeful ending reinforces Dostoevsky's belief in the power of grace and the possibility of inner transformation. Broader implications. Dostoevsky uses Raskolnikov as a vessel to critique rational egoism, the belief that individuals can determine morality based solely on logic and self-interest. The protagonist's theory about extraordinary men is rooted in this ideology. He argues that some people have the right to transgress moral laws if doing so benefits humanity. The flaw in his logic is revealed through the psychological collapse he experiences after committing murder. He does not become a great man. He becomes a broken one. The novel dismantles the idea that human beings can be reduced to rational equations. Through Raskolnikov, Dostoevsky argues that morality is not a social construct to be manipulated, but a spiritual reality that demands reverence. Crime, therefore, is not merely a legal matter, but a profound moral rupture that impacts the soul. Raskolnikov's eventual rejection of his own theory and his submission to a higher moral law represent Dostoevsky's advocacy for faith, compassion, and the interconnectedness of all human lives. The novel thus becomes not only a personal journey, but a metaphysical one, affirming the necessity of spiritual truth over intellectual abstraction. Raskolnikov's character also serves as a vehicle for Dostoevsky's commentary on the social conditions of his time. The setting of St. Petersburg, characterized by its crowded, impoverished, and morally ambiguous nature, reflects the alienation and degradation of individuals in an increasingly materialistic society. Raskolnikov's poverty and desperation highlight the failures of a system that leaves intellectual and sensitive individuals without purpose or support. Conclusion. Rodion Raskolnikov is a tragic hero whose downfall and redemption form the core of Crime and Punishment. Through him, Dostoevsky constructs a profound meditation on guilt, ideology, and the nature of evil. Raskolnikov's journey, from prideful isolation to humble awakening, exemplifies the novel's central message, that true healing and meaning are found not through intellectual superiority or rebellion, but through love, humility, and spiritual rebirth. Raskolnikov is not merely a character. He is a moral battleground, a philosophical experiment, and a symbol of a society at the crossroads of secular rationalism and spiritual revival. Ultimately, his story reinforces Dostoevsky's conviction in the transformative power of suffering and the enduring possibility of grace.